Should we repeal the Second Amendment? I say we repeal liberalism. How about that? Breitbart.com, folks. Former Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens says that the right to bear arms has run its course. Yeah, it's an old amendment. The Constitution's outdated. And now it's time, he says, to repeal it. To get rid of the Second Amendment. Do away with it. Why do we need it anymore? This argument coming from a former Supreme Court justice. He suggests that student protesters should shift their focus from pursuing legislation to pursuing a change in the Constitution. First of all, politically speaking, I don't think that's going to happen. I think there are too many people out there who do like or support the Second Amendment, do support the right to bear arms, not just for themselves, but for others. I don't think politically they would ever be able to do this. Unless, somehow they elected some kind of tyrant. And they just, with the pen in the Obama, his pen in his phone, just kind of did away with it somehow. But going through the process of amending the Constitution to repeal the Second Amendment, I don't think they could do it. If they found a way, I really think that might lead to a civil war. But that's besides the point. Where was I here? The Hill quoted a New York Times op-ed in which Stevens praised the efforts of student protesters, then said, demonstrators should seek more effective and more lasting reform. They should demand a repeal of the Second Amendment. He comes straight out and says it. He also stressed the importance of raising the minimum age for long gun purchases, supported the idea of prohibiting civilian ownership of semi-automatic weapons. Semi-automatic weapons, does that include handguns, by the way? I'm sure, this guy's a smart man. He was a Supreme Court justice. I'm sure he realizes that there's also such a thing as semi-automatic handguns. So when he says get rid of semi-automatic weapons in general, does that mean rifles and handguns? And he also wants to enact universal background checks. Which, of course, can you really be a leftist? Can you consider yourself to be a liberal Democrat if you don't support the idea of universal background checks? But he went on to say that more needs to be done. He supports all these things, but more needs to be done. Stevens expressed his continued disagreement with the District of Columbia v. Heller decision of 2008, suggesting that a repeal of the Second Amendment would remove hindrances posed by that decision and would allow sellers of firearms to be sued once more. That's just, that is the most absurd argument I've ever heard, by the way. I remember Hillary Clinton out on the campaign trail making that argument that people should be able to sue gun manufacturers. You kidding me? If some drunk driver gets in a car and kills somebody on the highway, should we be allowed to sue the car manufacturers too? If the gun manufacturer did something illegal, then that's a different story. But what they want to do is give people the ability to sue gun manufacturers even if they follow the law, which to me is absurd. He described removing Heller via repeal of the Second Amendment as a, quote, simple but dramatic action that would move Saturday's marchers closer to their objective than any other possible reform. So there you have it. He wants to repeal the Second Amendment, get rid of it. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I really don't think it's just him. I think most of the other liberals would love to see the Second Amendment repealed. A lot of them won't admit it. A lot of them say that, we respect the Second Amendment, but they would support the repeal of the Second Amendment as well. Why? Because they're radical leftists. That's why. They don't believe in individualism. They don't believe in your right to defend yourself. They think that the answer always comes from government. They think government knows what's best. More government is always the solution, not individualism, which is a shame because individualism and self-governance is what this country was founded on. They don't believe in it. Repeal the Second Amendment. Gee, that's genius.